Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene, and I talk about eating disorder recovery and everything related to healing the relationship with your own body, with food, and with movement. And let's dive right into the topic as we always do. And today we want to talk about the different recovery approaches, because I do know that there are a lot out there. And we also want to talk about which one is the right one or maybe the best one. As y'all know, I have recovered from an eating disorder myself. I did try different approaches, and I'm working with clients at the time. So, with them, I also work with approaches. So let's talk about the whole topic and talk about which one is the right one. Many people who are looking for help in their recovery journey, whether that is professional help or just looking for content and looking for answers, will come across All In. All In has become the new word for mini mod. Actually, back in the day when my eating disorder first developed, mini mod was a very big thing. It basically meant to eat at least, I think, 2,500 calories a day when you're in recovery. And it actually stems from different studies that show that women who have lost their period need at least, and of course, this is a medium. Some people will need more and some people need less, but at least 2,500 calories a day to get their period back. And other studies, it says 3,500. So you already see the numbers vary a little bit. And All In basically takes it a step further and says, especially if you are experiencing extreme hunger, you are going all in, you're going to fully listen to it, and you're going to take a full break from working out. What do I think about this approach? Well, first and foremost, this approach helped me to reach full recovery. This approach basically saved my life. And I knew very early on that this is what I need to do. It wasn't, well, on the one hand, to be honest, I want to do that because if I was very honest with myself, I wanted to eat. Yes, I had anorexia, and yes, I was starving myself for a very long time, but I wanted to eat. And I wanted to eat so badly that I was fantasizing about food. I was scrolling through social media, looking at recipes, looking at food pictures, which, by the way, is something very, very common with eating disorders, but more as to that in another video. And I wanted to eat. But the other part that really showed me that this might be the approach for me was that once I started recovery and once I started to increase my food and to decrease my movement and then to eventually fully stop it, my body was just screaming for food. And I'm talking my mind and my body. I felt like a, little bottomless pit. I felt like I was just constantly hungry. And even if I was like physically full for a moment, my mind was still screaming and I experienced mental hunger. And so I just knew, honestly, there is no way to not listen to that because that mental and physical hunger was so loud that I just had to give in. At the same time, my body was in so much pain once I started. I had a lot of water retention. I had a lot of pain moving. I made another video about that too, but like joint pain, back pain. Of course, I immediately thought, oh my God, that's because of the weight gain. And especially when my body gained more and more weight and I was an overshoot weight, I kept telling myself, oh my God, this must be so unhealthy. I can't even move anymore. I have all this pain. I have all this sweating. This has to be the wrong thing. When oftentimes that is actually the body's way of basically hindering you from moving more. The body is screaming at you and saying, no, we need to take a break. And if it's going to hurt, it's going to hurt, but I need you to stop moving. So this is what happened. And this is why I will probably always be a fan of All In because it worked for myself. Now, that does not mean, and this is super important for me because I know, again, that there are content creators out there, there are coaches out there who always just, I want to say, glorify one or the other way. And I personally just don't think that it works like this because I'm working with so many different clients and they are all individual in all their stories and recovery stories are individual. So I'm not going to have only one approach for them. And there are people where All In will not be the right approach. Maybe it's connected to trauma and maybe going all in and facing, letting go of all the rules immediately will completely overwhelm them and bring up their trauma and will de-traumatize them and, something like that. Maybe they have other comorbidities that we have to take into account. Maybe they don't have extreme hunger. Maybe they have extreme hunger, but their fear and their underlying beliefs are so big and so overwhelming that going all in just feels impossible, or feels even so triggering that they will, stop immediately again. So what I'm trying to say is there are a bunch of different reasons why going all in is not the right for every person. Some people might even not really have their hunger cues restored yet, because that can take a while. Some people, again, if they would go all in, they would still eat way too little because they don't really have the hunger cues. They don't really have the mental hunger. They would even think they would eat intuitively when in fact they would still, starve themselves and then restrict, but either because their bodies are so used to those little amount of foods, or because the eating disorder is just tricking them really, really good. So no, all in is definitely not the right approach, or the only approach, because it can be the right approach for some people and it can be the wrong approach for others. The next approach is to work out and to combine working out with recovery. And that is something that I see a lot online when people claim to be recovered or in recovery. And oftentimes the vibe is, oh my God, sports helped me so much, because it's either, it shows me that in order to be strong, I need to eat. And so in order to build muscle and to be strong, I need to eat, which, by the way, very common misconception, but we're going to talk about that in a second. Or because, oh my God, as long as I'm working out, I know that I'm allowed to eat. And so it helped me so much to eat. Now, those of you who know me might already have an idea what I think about this, because that approach I find very, very harmful. And it's not about working out in recovery, because that, again, is very individual. For a lot of people, taking a break from working out and decreasing or stopping it completely is very important, or even necessary. That doesn't go for everyone, and that doesn't also go for the whole recovery. I do think that it is possible to start working out at a certain point again, but again, only for some people. And for some people, this might not be the right approach. But saying, I am working out in order to allow myself to eat, or also I am eating so that I can build muscle, that connection is just way too close. So many people have such a strong connection between eating and working out when it comes to their eating disorders that we need to cut it somehow. And that's why either decreasing or in many, many cases stopping it completely can be so important, so that you have a hard stop and your brain learns, oh, I'm not working out anymore, but I'm still eating. So that must be safe. And then we can go from there. Also, many, many people who come from very restricted places have bodies that have broken down their muscle. And that's not always visible in the sense like, oh, I don't have any muscle anymore. It's also about the muscle density. It's about basically the quality of the muscle tissue, if you will. And I know for a fact that this is very common because the body starts to eat itself. For some people, that shows up in osteoporosis or osteopenia, where the bone density just decreases, and that can happen way faster than some people think. And oftentimes that also goes along with breaking down the muscle. And the body is doing that in order to get more energy out of the muscle, because it doesn't get the energy out of the food. So again, the body is basically eating itself. It's not always visible, and you won't always feel it. So some people don't even know that their bodies broke down muscle. And the other part is, if your body is constantly getting too little energy, it will not build more muscle again, because it takes energy to build muscle. And I'm also not talking about muscle in the aesthetic fitness sense. No, I'm talking about the regular muscle that your body needs in order to survive, because every organ, your heart, your basic bodily functions need muscle, and sometimes they can decrease. And that can even mean that people get incontinent, because also our bladder is a muscle. And I am pointing these things out because if somebody is watching right now that might still not be sure if they should choose recovery or not, those are the ugly truths of an eating disorder. And sooner or later, the body will break down. But if we take a look at recovery, Unfortunately, muscle is not the first thing that the body rebuilds. And to be honest, it's not even that unfortunate because the body is doing that for a reason. The body doesn't need the muscle to survive. The body needs other things to survive. So it will focus on rebuilding other things first, and it will focus on holding on to fat tissue, which saves more energy first. And rebuilding muscle is actually one of the things that take the longest in recovery. So I'm saying all of that because if somebody tells you, I am eating more to build muscle, then yes, in the sense that your body is doing it on its own. Trust me, my body rebuilt a lot of muscle before I even started to work out again. But that should not be the connection between, oh, I have to work out while I'm recovering because then I can give myself the allowance to eat so that I can build muscle. And oftentimes that also comes in the aesthetic sense. So basically, I want to look muscular, I want to look quote unquote toned, a term that I really don't like at all, but you get it. And so that approach, in my opinion, highly questionable. If somebody would tell me that, I would be very careful with that, and I'm not a fan. The next approach is having a meal plan. So oftentimes in the recovery community, especially if we're talking about all in, people seem to be very much against meal plans. And I actually want to talk about the pros and cons of meal plans here because, again, there is no right or wrong. There is no yes or no. Many people actually need some kind of meal plan in the beginning. For some people, that means a flexible meal plan where they can choose between certain meals for themselves, or where they just have a certain meal structure, meaning, okay, I'm going to have breakfast, dinner, and lunch, or breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I'm going to have 3 snacks in between. This can especially be helpful for people who don't really have hunger cues or who really struggle to eat enough so that you have some kind of structured meal plan. So again, this can be super helpful for some people. For other people, on the other hand, it might be very triggering and rather harmful. Especially somebody who is going through extreme hunger might feel like a meal plan is a maximum, and then they feel like, oh my God, I can only have these meals and I can only have three meals and 3 snacks a day, but I'm so much more hungry and now I'm, eating more than my meal plan, and that can cause a lot of disturbance. As many of you know, I am always saying a meal plan is always a minimum, but of course, the eating disorder loves to turn that into a maximum. So meal plans, yes and no, depend super much on what you're struggling with and if it's holding you back and kind of like, holding you back from listening to your hunger cues, or if it's helping you to eat more food. I know that there are so many more approaches out there, and I know I only covered 3 of them. So if there's any other ones that you would like me to talk about, please let me know in the comments, because again, I know that there are. Let me also know which other topics you would like me to cover, and I will see you in the next one.